Hey, hey! Holy cow! This ball's got a chance. It could be. It is the Shawn Mackey Show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. The Shawn Mackey Show, season number 3, episode 6. It's been a minute since we've posted a video. We ran into some difficulties. We're getting set to record Mac and Soup. We're going to hit you with our predictions for who will win the division and rank them top to bottom come end of the season in the National League. However, I had to remove a small patch of grass because we were getting ready to seed the backyard. And wouldn't you know it, that one little patch of weeds or grass happened to be right where my internet line was buried. So I clipped that last week just before we were getting ready to record, and totally lost an entire week of being able to record. I know, right? Because then that led into the internet was fixed like within 2 days. But then my daughter had a project at school. She's taking a film class. She had to write and shoot a brief little movie. And so Dad got to help act in that with Mom and sisters and friends. And then I helped her edit that using the good old Riverside app that I record my podcast on. Shout out to riverside.fm. Love their program. So Soup was on location doing some advanced scouting at the Cardinals-Dodgers game last night, getting ready to get us into next week when we finally do our predictions, check in. I'm going to check in right now and see how some of my previous predictions were doing. And then we're going to hit you with our division. And then we'll bring Soup back on for the Cubs-Cardinals series throughout season 3. Hope to get into a little bit of the Bears draft choices at the end of this episode. But I got a lot of things that I want to say right now about the Chicago Cubs. Good to see that the Cubbies are in first place. Ken Morrow predicted it. This guy that I was talking to about the show and about the Cubs. We talk about the Cubs all the time. He said by May 1st, they would be in first place. Before the 10-game winning streak, I was a little skeptical there with 13 or 14, maybe is it now, pitchers going on the IL. My guy, Nico Horner, the guy I predicted for the MVP, he's still putting up some kind of MVP numbers, but he's a little day-to-day right now with a little stiffness in the neck. Hopefully he'll be able to go today, nothing major. We keep losing pitchers left and right, and those injuries coupled with some roster moves that I've seen, have me scratching my head, basically, really. I was very critical of David Ross. I liked the David Ross move at the beginning. I thought coming off the Joe Madden era, Rossi had played for him. I thought maybe this would be a good deal. But as a catcher, I felt like Ross didn't really know how to handle a pitching staff. Wade made way too many weird-ass moves. And I see the same things in Craig Counsell. I'm not sold on Craig Counsell. I'm starting to believe Pat Murphy's been the whole reason why the Brewers had success under Craig Counsell. Remember, Craig Counsell played for Pat Murphy at Notre Dame. And then when he got the job in Milwaukee in 2015, by 2016, Craig Counsell was smart enough to hire Pat Murphy as his bench coach. Brewers are struggling this year. So who knows? Maybe they were two guys that actually needed each other. There's just some weird things I see going on. So with the injuries to the pitching staff, when Assad came back and you brought him back up and he came off an injury, you had Colin Ray and Javier Assad making starts in place of the normal starters. Colin Ray is still the starter, doing really well, by the way. Assad, I think when Boyd came back, they decided to put Assad in the bullpen. Okay, so this is where, remember, the guy that heads up the team from the dugout is called the manager. And this is where managing comes into play. And there are so many aspects of managing. I think it goes beyond putting your best lineup out on the field. You're talking like we've seen with up and down of the order, right? So Pete Crow he's been up and down. Nico Horner started a little bit further down, second or third in the lineup, got moved up to lead off as he started hitting. So you try to move guys up and down, maybe get them a little bit of help needed, see different situations. Maybe pitchers would be more willing to pitch to them if they're not a threat in certain spots in the lineup offensively. The same goes with your pitching staff. Now, you've had so many injuries to the pitching staff. And as soon as Boyd comes back, you put Assad in the bullpen, and Colin Ray starts that game against the Dodgers. And I'll tell you what, Colin Ray did not have it in that game against the Dodgers. He lasted only 3 innings, I believe, 3.1 innings, gave up 6 runs. And you immediately go to Assad. And I understand the thinking here. Assad's been your other spot starter. He'd been pretty decent in the role. But I've seen over Craig Counsell and Assad, there's some weirdness going on. Like last year, when Assad would be struggling, it seems like Counsell would leave him in. Oh. And it seemed like when he was doing well, just based off of pitch count or whatever, he'd be pulled from the game, and then the game would have eventually turned to shit. He'd either be on the brink of having the win, and then he'd get pulled, and then the Cubs would lose. So same thing now this year with the Dodgers. Assad immediately goes to the bullpen. When Colin Ray struggles in 3.1 innings, you bring in Assad in the 3rd inning. And this is where the managing comes from. So you had just had Assad starting for you. There's a different mentality that comes with knowing you're starting and knowing you're in a bullpen. And sometimes guys just can't turn it on and off. And I think for that very first outing, when Colin Ray struggled, I feel like if you would have left Assad alone and went with your normal bullpen, and then the Dodgers score 6 more runs and they blow the game out of hand. But there was still a point when Assad was in there. He gave up, I think, the 2 of the runs that were charged to Colin Ray to give Colin Ray his 6. But then it was still, even when it was 8-4, it was like in the 4th or 5th inning, it was a still close game. But then Assad just didn't have it, and he gave up 6 runs. But Craig Counsell left him in to eat up those innings. And I think those 2 factors kind of play a role in sometimes in the mental aspect of the game. And don't try to say, well, they're professionals and they should have the mental aspect licked. Well, we also know they should have fundamentals down, and we don't see fundamentals anymore. We also know that they should know how to play the game correctly, and we don't see that often anymore. They'll still get to this level, and there might be some struggles mentally, and there might be some struggles physically. So we can't just say, oh, it happens, he'll get over it. I don't think Assad's pitched since that day, So let's take a look at this. I'm going to look this up and see what his game logs look like. But I don't think he's pitched since that debacle in LA. Yeah. He has not pitched in a game since that 12-4 loss against the Dodgers. What's the thinking here, Craig? You immediately put him to the bullpen. Great. You put him into a situation in which your starter, who you've been counting on, didn't have it, left him in the game to give up 6 runs, and then you don't pitch him over the course of the next 3 games. You don't use him. So are you thinking like, wow, I really fucked him up and I got to keep him out of a few games so he can just work and get his mind right? Or what's the deal? I personally, with these injuries, because now you've seen Justin Steele had another setback, so we don't know when he's coming back. But I think here, Colin Ray struggled for that game. I think maybe when it was his turn in the rotation again, since he's a spot starter anyway, then maybe you use Assad and you give Colin Ray a little extra time off. Now, I'm glad they didn't, because the Colin Ray came in on his very next start and was pretty damn good. There's this whole psyche thing that goes on mentally wise. You know, you bring guys in, and that's the thing that David Ross used to do, is like certain guys would be used in certain situations for a good portion of the season. So you're talking like an 8-inning guy, a setup man, or a closer, right? And we all know closer's the guy that you want, and he's steady, and that's all he does is closing. But then so you bring a guy in, you've pitched him in the 8th inning for 5-6 appearances in a row, and then all of a sudden the game's really tight, and you're like, I know this guy, he can shut him down, so I'm going to bring him in the 6th. Well, sometimes I feel that weighs heavily on their brains, and it's a totally different situation, and we see the collapse, and then it doesn't work out. So it's just moves like these. Yes, I second-guess them. Of course I'm going to second-guess them. We as fans have the right to second-guess the moves made by the managers of the teams we support when we spend money for those organizations to be able to exist and pay their ball players. Okay? Nothing different than the guys you watch on ESPN or you know, all the morning shows, the afternoon shows, the evening shows, 24-hour shows, the overnight shows, every show, right? So I think Craig Counsell's decision-making is weird in another aspect, and here's a perfect example. I picked Nico Horner for my MVP. I was the homer. I picked my Chicago Cubs guy. But now I'm thinking, and I was 3 games ago, that, man, I should have went. I think he would qualify. I should have went with Ballesteros with the Cubs. The guy had been absolutely tearing it up when he was slotted in the lineup 4th or lower. Now, I just went back to the Cubs game against the Padres, and Ballesteros wasn't in the last game against the Dodgers, so he had just recently played in the last 4 games. Let's see. April 27th in the 7-9 loss to the Padres. The win against the 2 victories against the Padres and the 2 victories against the Diamondbacks. So he's been in the last 5 games in some capacity as a catcher or your DH. On April 27th against the Padres, he was slotted 6th in the lineup. And I think prior, all his other game logs, if I were to click on these, especially the ones where he's got all his hits, I think he'd been slated somewhere like at one point 4th and 5th, 6th, 7th, lower in the lineup. And he had gotten a lot of hits. And on the 27th, at that point, his batting average was .387. Craig Counsell moved him down to 2nd in the lineup for the last 4 games, and he's an offer. Again, in the 8-3 victory against the Padres, he was 0 for 4. The 5-4 win against the Padres, he was 0 for 5. He was 0 for 3 in the first game against Arizona. He was 0 for 4 yesterday. So he's 9, 10, 11, 12, 16. He's 0 for 16, and his batting average has dropped from .387 to .308. He's basically a rookie. He's got a great bat. He's kind of the complete package. He can hit for power. He's got good bat control. He can control the barrel. He'll put the ball, he'll hit the ball where it's pitched. He'll put it in play to all fields. But he's 0 for 16 in his last 4 games when Craig Counsell moved him down to the 2nd spot. I get why he moved him down. He's the guy that's been hitting. Hit him above Nico Horner. And Nico Horner gets on base and Ballesteros keeps hitting. You score more runs. It's a great strategy if it works, but it's not working. So let's see what Craig Counsell does today. Is that a psyche issue? Is that, I don't know. Is it one of those things that plays on a guy's mind? You put more pressure on him by moving him up in the lineup to hitting number 2. I guess we just have to wait and see how the Craig Counsell era does. They're playing great ball now. That 10-game win streak, and then they split 3-3 on the 6 games against the Dodgers and the Padres. I would have liked them to take 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, but that's okay. And then they come back and won the first 2 games against Arizona. We're sitting at 20-12, first place in the division. So, I think we got some things to work with. The Cubs have some things to work with. It's been an exciting season to this point. Hopefully the injuries can be curtailed a little bit and we start getting some guys back and healthy. And then we just see how the rest of the season plays out. Now, my rookie of the year guy, Sal Stewart, he's still hanging in there. He's hitting .260 currently, 9 home runs, 29 RBIs, 7 stolen bases, slugging .528 and an OPS of .878. So I like my chances that he may be rookie of the year. Still a long season left to go. Talked about Nico. Nico's still hitting about a .295, .297. Been out of the last couple of games in the lineup with that stiff, sore neck. We'll see how he goes. And the only other guy that I got to look to see is my Cy Young Award winner. Now, here's the deal with Shohei. Man, a lot of teams around baseball are starting to voice their frustrations. It's almost like you got 2 pitchers, an extra pitcher in that lineup for the Dodgers. Ohtani's listed as a DH, so they get to carry their normal 13 pitchers, but then he gets trotted out there as a starting pitcher every 6 days. That's like having 14 guys on the pitching staff. He's a unique kind of guy. Hell, right now, offensively, he's hitting .252 with 6 home runs and 13 RBIs. But we want to see, we want to get the pitching stats. In 2026, he's 2-1 with a .60 ERA, 34 strikeouts. So Shohei still has a chance. He keeps that ERA down, picks up a bunch more wins. I kind of just picked him because it's one of the only awards he doesn't have left. And since the Major League Baseball just loves trotting him out there and giving him awards every year, I figured maybe it was a safe gamble. I don't like to gamble. So luckily Soup and I don't have anything riding on this. So those are my guys. And just wanted to check in on them a little bit. Wanted to voice my opinions about the Cubs and where they're at. I think Jameson Taillon is still giving up some home runs, but he's pitching a whole hell of a lot better during the season than he did in spring training. So we'll still see. The jury's still out on him in my mind. Cubs are at 20-12, leading the Central Division currently, just slightly ahead of Cincinnati, I believe. Love to see those Brewers down there near the bottom, but damn it, those Cardinals are creeping back up. Soup might come back and get me. He might get me. But here's another thing that I wanted to talk about. This Ian Happ deal. He is a great ball player. He's in Major League Baseball after all. So he's a great ball player. Defensively, he's probably considered a superstar. 4 gold gloves in a row. Great. But man, when he makes those defensive snafus like he did in the Dodgers game, they really stand out a little bit. I've never really liked the guy. I didn't understand the extension that they gave him. And I think I just don't like him because to me, he's not the prototypical left fielder. I think that's a power slot in your lineup. And he does have power. He'll hit the home runs, but everybody was like, congratulations, Ian Happ just surpassed Derek Lee for home runs as a Cub. Well, Derek Lee hit 179 or 180, whatever the final number was, in 6 years. It's taken Ian Happ 10 to do that. So that tells me he's only averaging about 18 home runs a year. But he does take a lot of pitches. He will get on base via the walk. Strikes out a little bit too much for my liking. But I just don't like the clutchness or the lack of clutchness from Ian Happ. I joke with buddies when I'm talking about Ian Hapless, and I say you can always count on Ian Happ to get you runs you don't need. Meaning usually when the Cubs are up by a lot of runs and it's late in the game, he'll hit the home run or the double and drive in another run. Now, I will give him credit. Yesterday against the Diamondbacks, Cubs won 2-0, and technically the home run he hit was the game-winning run. So I'll give him that. He will do that every now and again. He will get you a run that maybe puts you ahead and you eventually win the game. But I'm just saying that if I were to look at, 10 games in a row in which you needed Ian Happ to do something so that you could win the game, I'd be willing to bet and say he only does that 2 to 3 times. So I guess in the realm of Major League Baseball, if he's clutch 3 times out of 10, that's technically a 300 clutch average. But I guess I just see way too many times the striking out when they've got runners on base and the Cubs need him to drive in some runs. And unfortunately, I was striking out looking, and I'm really getting tired of guys striking out looking at the Major League Baseball level. I know guys got good eyes, but with this ABS, the damn stitch, the one stitch on the ball can scrape across that little computerized box, outside, inside, high or low, and it's going to be called a strike. And those, in my mind, are the ones that are too close to take. You see some teams and players are using their challenges all willy-nilly. Some teams are kind of try to be smart and conservative about it, so you don't often have the ability to do that every at-bat. So striking out looking 3 and 4 times a game, I guess, and Ian Happ does that more than he does anything good, I think, in at least is the way I witness it. Let's see. Standard batting over his career. Average strikeouts for Ian Happ. He averages 168 strikeouts a season. That's 1 a game. Grand scheme of things, it's not bad. But the deal is a lot of those games, that average is when he has 3 or 4 or 5 at-bats in a game and strikes out the majority of the time. That average plays out to 1 a year. You look at the home runs for Ian Happ. Right now in 10 years, he's averaging 25 home runs a year. The 8 this year, I think, kind of bumped that average up a little bit because it's early in the game, and that's probably also a projection. So, I just, the strikeouts are too much for me. The on-base percentage, it's pretty good, sitting at 890 right now. I just would love to see him go on a tear. If he give us 10, 12 games in a row where he's just super on fire, maybe I'll ease up a little bit on the old Ian Happ. But I don't know. Kudos to him. He's a major league ball player. I'm not. I'm just sitting back analyzing him based on what I see. And I just wish he would be a little bit more clutch, so to speak, for my liking. Now I kind of want to transition into the Chicago Bears offseason. We talked a little bit about it with the signings earlier during the free agent period. I'm just not sure what the hell the thinking was on this draft class. All right, so I jotted down before the draft, like the number of picks that they had in the order and what they had. And then they went in and made a bunch of trades and they were flipped around all off the board. I think they even ended up with fewer than they started with. I felt like they were going to go safety or left tackle first. And they did. They went safety. Dylan Thieneman, if I'm saying that correctly, he's going to be considered a high-impact player, immediate starter. So I kind of think the entire draft was around their first and second pick. The rest were just like, let's see what we can do. Logan Jones, the center out of Iowa. I get why you go after this kid. You lost Drew Dahlman when he retired. You picked up Garrett Bradbury, but Garrett Bradbury's a little bit older of a guy. You only got him for a couple 2-3 years, if that. And you want to build for the future and anchor that offensive line starting at the center position. They did pick up, let's see, that was it. No other offensive linemen in that draft class. So I think they signed Theo Benedette to a future contract or picked him up for the 1 year, and they're going to keep working with him. Braxton Jones is coming back, I guess. So I think they're looking at between those two guys, or maybe in free agency, they can find somebody. But I think that's a very important position. It's not something that you should have messed with like you did in the playoff game when you brought in McFadden at guard and moved Thuney out to tackle. I think there were a few plays that McFadden didn't make from his guard position that Thuney absolutely would have made, and it could have been a difference in a game. So that was kind of weird. But then they picked up another tight end, Sam Roush. Talking about this guy's going to be a blocking tight end. We all know that Ben Johnson likes to have these crazy mad scientist type like concoction plans and plays and loves the tight end position. Is this kid a hybrid again? Can he block well and run routes and be a third tight end threat? If you were just looking for a blocking tight end, I don't know why you waste a draft pick on that, because you could always sign guys to 1-2 year deals that could block for you effectively. And you could use that draft slot somewhere else for a bigger need, like a left tackle, maybe. Who knows? Maybe Sam Roush comes in and he's so good at blocking and running routes and he's athletic enough, and they say, hey, buddy, we're going to convert you into a left tackle. And he comes out to be one of the best left tackles in the league and is a high dollar guy, and the Bears keep signing him. And then we just Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl. Guy can dream, can he? Wide receiver Xavier Thomas out of LSU. Cornerback Malik Muhammad, secondary depth piece, unless he can overtake and knock Tyreek Stevenson out of any kind of starting position. Tyreek Stevenson has become my Chicago Bears Ian Happ. I don't like the guy. And then Jordan Vandenberg, defensive tackle out of Georgia Tech, with their 6th pick. We're just going to have to wait and see on these guys. I haven't had a chance to look up any kind of game film. I'm going to do that. Soup will be on again next week. We will have for you our National League, Major League Baseball predictions from bottom to top, or top to bottom, however you want to say it, for our 3 divisions in the National League. And then we'll bring Soup back on the Cubs-Cardinals game. So between next week and the end of May, when the Cardinals face the Cubs, we'll be getting into some depth on these Bears draft picks, combined with the free agent signings and everybody else who's in place. I know that they signed a bunch of undrafted free agents. I know they invited Olin Krutch's son, Josh, who's a center out of Illinois, to camp. And I think this kid's fired up, and he's got a name to make for himself, and he's got some big shoes to fill if he's going to stick around on that Bears roster. So I just wanted to get this time in, get this episode in for you. We'll hit you next week. Like I said, Robert Soup Campbell will be back on with our Major League Baseball predictions. That's all I got for this episode of the Shawn Mackey Show. I'll catch you when I catch you. Peace. Hey, if I made you laugh, made you think, or even made you smile, please tell all your friends. If I didn't, just keep that shit to yourself. Thanks for listening to The Shawn Mackey Show.